Hey guys, Willie Creeman back with the AFC South again, talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars, who finished 9-8 last year, which was good enough for second in the division. That's right, they finished second in the division, but this has to be for me the most disappointing team in all of football last year, and that's saying something when you consider the way the NFC East fared in the postseason. But like everyone remembers, Jacksonville played Kansas City very tough at the beginning of the year. They were loaded on offense last year, and they just couldn't get it together, right? Like the offense looked really bad at times, sometimes even lost, but the defense looked worse. And that was kind of sad. I mean, Doug Marrone, he's just got a lot of questions to be able to answer this year. The first, maybe whether like Trevor Lawrence is actually the quarterback for this team, right? I've seen some scary comparisons to Daniel Jones and his stats, and it just does not look good for Trevor Lawrence. Hopefully, he's able to figure it out this year. But they lose Calvin Ridley in the offseason. I just didn't like seeing what happened with him. I felt like they did not utilize him properly. You saw many times that they just had him running posts and they weren't able to get the ball to him, where he was most effective running drags across the middle and kind of creating that separation with the defensive back. They started to do that for a couple of weeks and they're like, oh, this works. And then they stopped doing it. It just made no sense to me. And as a fantasy football player, like it drove me nuts because you were like, man, Ridley's having these games where he could score 2, 3 touchdowns in the game, and you're just not using him the right way. And then he'd have games where he did get 2 touchdowns in the game, and you're like, oh man, like they're figuring it out. So they've really got to be able to find a way to be more consistent with that next year. Their biggest free agent addition in my mind is Eric Armstead, right? Like this was a must for them. He's an absolute space eater, and just he can get after the quarterback. He causes chaos for the offensive line. Like I just think easily their best signing, and I didn't think that they would even come close to being able to compete in this division without having a signing like that. Now, the worst free agent addition, and I've mentioned this before, is Gabe Davis, right? Like, it's not that I hate Gabe Davis. I just dislike him strongly as a fantasy football player, and I dislike his consistency on the football field. I don't like having a guy that goes out and gets 5 catches for 170 yards and 3 touchdowns in 1 week, and then 6 catches over the next 4 weeks. Like that's just not beneficial to the team. What you need is a guy that's going to produce every week for you, or every other week, or a little with a little more consistency. I'm just not sure he's that guy, and I think they overpaid him big time. But good luck. Like that's the guy you brought in. So in the draft, right, they go after Brian Thomas Jr., which I really like that pick, but then they turn around and they cut Zay Jones. I that's just head scratching to me. What I rather them have done is actually draft Brian Thomas Jr. and not sign Gabe Davis. Then you keep Zay Jones on your team and you actually have a pretty good wide receiver core between them and Christian Kirk. Like I don't understand what their thought processes were with that. And like, or they could have kept Ridley. Like they could have had multiple options of what to do, but it felt like once they found out that they missed on Ridley, they just were like, all right, let's make more bad decisions with that, and compounded those decisions together. But I just, they gained a lot with trading back with Minnesota, but I just wish they had gone defensive back maybe instead of Thomas. Like if they were able to keep a wide receiver, like they could have done other things with their draft that could have been more beneficial. Again, nothing against Brian Thomas Jr. I think he's going to be great in the NFL, or at least good or above, and have the chance to become great. But I feel like they could have addressed other issues on their team, especially in a division where they all got better at wide receiver, right? Like Tennessee steals Ridley from you. Stephon Diggs gets traded to Houston. Like, I don't know, A.D. Mitchell even going to Indy. I feel like they're getting better, all three of those teams. I'm not sure I feel the same way about the Jaguars.